Hello and welcome to Muse and Metrics. This is your host, Philippa Burgess.
Hey everyone, my name is Cheton. I am a risk and vulnerability analyst, and I typically work within vulnerability management, and then I also do risk assessments as well, which has been pretty interesting. This is my first full year in the tech world. If I give a little more context about myself, I actually started in customer service with my previous company, Verizon, and I was there for about 9 years, and I decided that I wanted to do something more meaningful. So I started going to school for Bachelor's in Cybersecurity Technology, and I obtained that last December. And I've been working as a risk and vulnerability. Actually, before I graduated, I did an internship and I was hired on full time. And so here I am now.
That's fantastic. I have so many exciting things I want to talk to you about. So I just want to talk about our paths first crossed through the ISC Squared Certified in Cybersecurity spring training boot camp that we did. That was, at least I came in through it through Women in Cybersecurity. I don't know if all of us were women in cybersecurity, but I know we all sort of landed there. And that was my first certification in cybersecurity, and it was so great to get that. Now I'm a graduate student, so I still have more time before I sort of officially enter the industry, but I'm in this role of facilitator and I'm running a mentorship through my role as a Women Tech Makers Ambassador. We now have 50 women in the mentorship. And a lot of the women were raising their hands because they'd done certifications or they'd finished a bachelor's, and then they were like, wait, I am feeling kind of lost. Like, where do I start? And a lot of them had sort of missed that internship. So I think it's really interesting that you're like, hey, went from internship to sort of being hired right on. And I'm sure, and I can sort of speak to this as well, is that we bring whatever we bring. I don't think that those things, even though we say, oh, I want to change careers, I want to go in these new directions, I think we still find that we build on those original skills.
Yeah, I'm building on the original skills because if I'm being completely honest and transparent, when I first got into this industry, I was like, I don't, like kind of like a panic, like, oh my gosh, like I don't know what to do. This isn't my typical, the typical way that I've worked or industry I've been in. I didn't know, really where to go or what to do. But I realized that it's helping me build on my problem solving skills, my analytical skills, my critical thinking skills as well, and just building more confidence within me to be a better woman in tech. And I just wanted to touch on this too. Women in cybersecurity is actually what helped me progress in this industry. And I can tell that story a little later if you would like.
Absolutely would love it. I think one of the questions I have, and this is just something that's kind of occurred to me more recently, is there is this sense I get from some of the women in our program where I see some really moving forward very, very quickly. And I see others I feel like are a little slower in the process. And when I put this group together, I was seeing that there were a lot of, I'll call it broken bridges. Like it didn't seem like it was as clear for a lot of people. Like, how do you start? Again, internships I think are a great way. Apprenticeships, hackathons, there are paths, but for a lot of people, if it's going to be a little overwhelming or not knowing where to start or just feeling alone in the process. And one thing that occurred to me is that you don't necessarily need the job to give you the credibility that you're in the industry. You can just step into the industry. And you do that by joining these organizations, finding these communities, getting involved. And that's where doing those hackathons and then shouting out about them on social media and say, hey, I just did this, and continuing to get those certificates, certifications, but also just volunteering your knowledge and getting into groups and finding ways that you really can raise your hand and say, I'm in this industry now. I may not have my first right position, but it's coming. So whereas I feel like if you're just outside the industry, trying to apply for those jobs, it's a lot harder. Does that kind of resonate?
I mean, yeah, I think it does resonate because just like you said, I would say like to anyone that's like trying to get their foot in the door. I mean, what helped me, I should say, is, getting in these like you said, getting in these industries, going out and networking, meeting new people. When I first started, I went to a few different conferences where I was able to connect with a few different people. Like you said, too, getting into groups, volunteering, not being afraid to advance your knowledge, whether that's a hackathon, whether that's Hack Me, whether that's any like cybersecurity group that you could get in. I think that that's really beneficial for anyone trying to break into the field. I can't really say necessarily how difficult it is for somebody outside of the field trying to break into the field, just because I don't think I've ever spoke to anyone that was outside trying to break in. So that's kind of a little hard for me to comment on.
No, that's okay. But I think what you're saying, and I'm seeing that, is as clearly, you know, obviously you went back to school, got the bachelor's, did the internship, and that created a very smooth pathway for you and built on experience that you already brought to the table, that you well developed. And from my understanding, customer service is no easy feat. It really has a lot of interpersonal skills. You have to have a lot of empathy. You have a lot of kind of rhino skin because you have to deal with cranky people who don't understand that you are not part of the problem and you are there to help, but they don't always see it that way. And I'd imagine, you know, that there's just a lot of skills, a lot of insight that you, and just practical experience that you bring in having that background, and also working for a big corporation and kind of understanding those procedures and protocols.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I can see that. So tell me what you do now. So you were talking about, you do vulnerability assessments, risk management, probably not languaging that correctly. So if you can restate what it is exactly, and then like what's your day-to-day look like? Because that just sounds super cool, and I'm sure other people would be very interested in hearing about it.
Yeah, so I do risk and vulnerability management right now. We use a certain software that helps me to look at the current end user devices, right? And I'll run a scan on their devices, and that scan will allow me to see all of the listed vulnerabilities on their actual computer or laptop. And once I get an idea of the actual vulnerabilities that are associated with them, I will pretty much associate the risk, and then I'll send it to them. I'll send it to the actual team, their manager, or the actual individual itself. And I'll say, hey, these are the list of the vulnerabilities that are associated with your device. Can you please remediate them? Because that'll also provide the remediation steps on how to go about fixing it. And then that will be included within, I don't know if you know about like a patch, like a patch cycle that they have, whether that's like a patch Tuesday, or if they have a certain patch cycle within their organization. It will help to just mitigate those risks that are on those end user devices. Now, if it's a risk that's pretty high, like a 9 or a 10 is showing as a CVSS score, then we'll have to do more of an assessment of it, like an emerging threat, because it could potentially be that, right? So then we'll assess it more. We'll go through a whole documentation. We'll pull other people in from other teams, and we will assess the risk to see like, hey, could this possibly be something that really truly impacts our organization, and how do we want to move forward with this? So I do that. That's what I do as far as like my day-to-day, but then I'm also doing risk assessments. So risk assessments are when you're bringing in a new application to the organization, we will assess the risk that application will bring, like its threat vector, the impact, the probability of that potential risk being exploited by a threat actor. And then we'll go through risk statements to actually say like, hey, this is the risk statement that this brings. But we just do a full assessment, and then we have those conversations with our partners or our vendors, so that we can gather more information on the knowledge that they have associated with the actual application. And then once we do our full assessment, we will, say, hey, this was our assessment. These are the things that we think that you need to fix. These are the things that, to help protect you, but also us as an organization as well. So I'm actually in a department within a company. So my department is called the Attack Surface Management Team. So we are the first line of defense. We are the ones that we'll look at articles like Bleeding Computer, Hacker News, and things of that nature, right? And we will look at the current risks or vulnerabilities that are out there right now. And then so we're the first line of defense. If we see anything, then we will raise that up to, like the IT infrastructure team, the security team, if it's in their realm, right? If it's associated with their department, we'll have those discussions with them, and then we will all work together to make sure that those are getting, like I said, remediated, so it doesn't pose a bigger risk to the organization.
And do you feel that you obviously started as an intern, and I'd imagine you got mentored in that, and then felt that you were ready to sort of step into this role, and they felt that too when you had graduated? Was it right after graduation, or was there any sort of time in between? And I guess the answer is, are you still feeling like you're getting mentored? Do you kind of see the next step of like, where do you go from here? And are you able to, mentor or maybe work with the next generation of interns?
Yes. I would say that I am still, so when I started the internship, I was doing threat intelligence, right? Where I was, it was more so reading more articles, looking at all of our use cases within our organization to be able to, and then looking at the use cases, seeing exactly, pinpointing what exactly they were, and then looking at threat actors and the threat actors that were targeting those organizations. I'm sorry, the use cases that we had within the organization. When I was doing the internship, that was in threat intelligence, but then that helped me gain a lot of knowledge, because I didn't know anything about threat actors. I had no idea that a lot of the use cases that the company had, I had absolutely no idea that was even something people would even try to get to, you know what I mean? So that was pretty interesting. But as I moved on from my internship, I did have a little bit of a gap from my internship. I want to say about a month and a half, to where I didn't go into my full-time role, but they really appreciated all of the hard work that I had done within my internship. So about a month and a half later, I got a call back like, "Hey, Cheton, we want you on our team." So that was very encouraging for me, and also pretty cool that I made that much of an impact, to show my expertise and skills, to be able to get a full-time position as a risk and vulnerability analyst. I don't necessarily know fully what I want to do or where I want to go, because I'm really early in my career. There are certain avenues I want to go down, but as far as finding my niche and the best place for me, I'm just excited to see where it goes, and where I land in this industry, because I do think that I could bring a lot of value to it. I know you mentioned too about the mentorship. I feel like I'm just getting the nudge to do the mentor program through WESIS.
Mm-hmm.
But I was a mentee last year, but excuse me, something is telling me to take the leap and do it this year, because I could probably really do well with that, in that role, and really help someone that really doesn't know where they want to go. Even though I'm early in my career, that doesn't mean it can't help me possibly figure out where I want to go as well, or just having that that I don't know, helping people is one of my one of the best things that brings me joy and fulfillment. So knowing that, I'm gonna apply and see what happens, and if I get it, it'll, knowing that I'll be able to help someone or guide them or calm their anxiety or their imposter syndrome and things of that nature, would be really would bring a lot of joy to me and them.
Absolutely.
Hopefully.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, I've been reading those emails, and I'll say that what I've seen, actually, or even when I did the application myself, that they were saying, "Hey, we need more mentors." So if you're applying for a mentor, I'm sure they would love to see you raise your hand for that. And let me actually, because really it's we've met online, but it's really the first time we're getting to talk. So I'm just going to give you some feedback that I see as I see it, if that's okay. The feedback that I see right now is that for the many decades that I was working, I always felt like I was tracked into the arts, and I loved it, and I pursued kind of the media, marketing, communications. But then in my opportunity of going back to grad school, I've taken a sharp left into tech. And what I realize is that I've kind of think of speaking as kind of this invisible, like it's not hard for me. I'm like, oh, you need me to show up and give a talk? No problem. And yet coming in as a woman in tech and having this identity. So I'm part of this Google Women Tech Makers program, and they offered the Women Tech Makers a Women Developers Academy. So here I am thinking, oh, great, they're going to teach me how to code better, because that's what I'm all about right now is getting my technical skills to be proficient. Oh, no, it's a public speaking course. So the very fact that you are here as someone who has those interpersonal skills, who has that confidence to speak, and being a woman, we're now seeing a lot more programs that are supporting women. And that's why we have things like Women in Cybersecurity and Women Tech Makers, which is a Google initiative. And I'm part of just so many women programs. And yet at the same time, I think politically, I'm seeing like a lot of pushback. Like they're like, we don't like those anymore. And for minorities as well, we're seeing a lot of more initiatives that I've never seen before. And I'm so happy that they're there. And I hear obnoxious comments like, well, you just want the best person for the job, like no DEI. And I'm like, yeah, but if you don't train people, you're never going to get the right person for the job. You have to start by planting and nurturing the tree, and then you can harvest the fruit. You can't just say, well, I'm only going to pick the already grown fruit. That doesn't work that way. So I'm a big advocate of DEI especially from a nurturing, training, helping people feel like they belong. And so what I see in you is visibility. Your ability to be seen inspires others. If you're doing it, we can do it. And so you being here, you working and building that personal brand of being someone who just says, I'm in the cybersecurity industry, and you can be too, is so inspiring. And that's, so that's my feedback for you, is that so many women in these technical fields don't speak up. I mean, I think a lot of times they say for many people, like they fear public speaking more than death. But then you make that women, and then you make that women in tech, and then you make that women in cybersecurity. And you really find yourself in a minority of a minority. And I'm not even talking a racial minority. I'm just talking the so few people who really are that comfortable speaking up, and that's its own skill, and one that you have very well developed. It's clear that you have that. So I would encourage you to continue in those ambassador roles and those mentor roles, because I see you providing infinite opportunity and inspiration for others.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Because if I'm being honest, like public speaking especially has been one of my biggest fears, to be honest. But I am stepping out and making myself more encouraged to know that like you can do this, Cheton. It's not you have the capability to do it, even though it's your fear. Like persevere through it. Like you should persevere through anything that life throws at you, right? When it's difficult or it's problematic, you have to persevere through it, because then you just allow not only your mind but your body to become at ease, and then it just gets more comfortable as you continue to go. So I really appreciate you saying that, and that's actually what I've wanted to do, is just like, okay, get out there, put yourself out there, and then you could get more comfortable as time goes on. This is my first speaking engagement, and I'm so happy that I was able to do it with you, Philippa, because like you said, we met through the WESIS ISC squared study group, but we never actually spoke. So it's like, I thank you for allowing me to be a part of your platform and to give me the opportunity to be my first speaking engagement. It's really, really encouraging.
Working with that next generation to to be visible and to be role models, because people do not go for what they do not see.
Right.
People don't go for what they don't see. And we want people who look like us and have similar gender, similar backgrounds, similar culture, ethnicity, whatever it is that gives a race that we can see ourselves in others. And I think that's the thing. If people are like, well, nobody who looks like me is in that role, why would I? I think I've been watching a lot of political talks lately, or someone was saying, I'm kind of done being the groundbreaker, ceiling breaker. Can we just solve this already? I don't need to be the pioneer in being the first, for all of these things. It'd really be great if we could just get on with, just having, especially women, more of us more often, in these roles.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with you. I think maybe a lot of women may be a little nervous to be in these kind of roles, only because it is a very male dominated industry. But I don't want anyone to feel discouraged that that an industry is male dominated, because they still have their voice. They still have the special attributes that they bring to cybersecurity, or just being a woman in tech in general. And even if they've been in situations where they felt discouraged, like, I don't ever want anyone to feel like they can't keep going just because of that. But it's very awesome to me that you're looking at the people that aren't at the top. You want to pull people up. You want to pull people up, and you want to make sure that, like you said, they're visible and that their voice is heard, and that they get to share their experience and their expertise. And I really truly believe that there should be more people like you, Philippa. There may be some people that are, but like it's very encouraging to see that you are taking that leap to like make that imprint on this industry, to make sure that anyone who's underrepresented can be just lifted up.
And I'll say, just like we learn tech or we learn cybersecurity or anything that we're learning, there's a few things that I'll say that are in common with speaking or media. You start building your credits, you build your muscle, and then you build your credits, because as you invite yourself onto other stages, they'll all say, well, what have you done? And so these start being your credits. These get to be things that you point to. And then you build more momentum, and you get onto bigger and bigger stages. And that's a thing that, and then your confidence also continues to grow as you do that as well. So to me, the idea of building that personal brand and speaking requires that same level of building that muscle as building a tech skill, or just, skilling ourselves up in cybersecurity. I will say that my journey into cybersecurity was not quite as linear. And as I told you, I sort of stack a few things. And what's really interesting to me now is seeing that sometimes I think I'm going in all these different directions. And then I get this one-pointedness where I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so interesting. That one point where geospatial and cloud, AI, ML, and cybersecurity all intersect. And then when I build that onto communications and media, then it's like, okay, I am in my zone. So that's been fun for me to sort of see that. But for me, it started with a career. Like I said, I was in a lot of digital marketing, digital media. I had a career in the entertainment industry, on the agent manager side of the industry in the business. And I moved to Colorado and did a lot of digital media, digital marketing there. And then we had a pandemic, and I was like, where to next? And so I signed up for grad school, and I got a master's in urban planning. I learned a lot about equity and a lot of how inequitable our society is and has been. And I think, if anything, I got really motivated to say, how can I help that conversation and that whole experience? And, sort of seeing like that in ways I never understood. And I got really interested in data science and data visualization. And so that led me into GIS. And then from there, I ended up being an IC scholar. So I'm getting mentored by the intelligence community, and starting to realize that, like, intelligence agencies, at the core of their being and their mission is cybersecurity. And then I signed up for a second master's in human security and geospatial intelligence, because I wanted to sort of pursue work in government. And then realized that I needed certain skills that to qualify for these internships, but because they're a year out, you still have to be a student. So I'm finally at the point where I'm like, I am qualified. I'm well qualified. But I also am finishing that second master's in December. So I was like, you know what? It just worked out. I had some room in my schedule. And so now I'm in law school for a privacy law and cybersecurity certificate. And in the meantime, I've been doing these courses, doing these hackathons. As a woman tech maker, Google is giving me all of these training in cloud and cloud security. And I'm also a Microsoft Student Learn Ambassador. So that's where I'm sort of seeing this intersection of, like I said, geospatial, cloud, AI, ML, and cybersecurity. So that's kind of where I come from in all of this. But now I'm like, ooh, I want to start telling these stories. But as a Women Tech Maker ambassador, we have projects that we do, and they run an annual International Women's Day campaign. And our theme this year was Impact the Future. So I was like, and I just, because I was new to this new cybersecurity core program, I started seeing all of these posts from women around the internet saying, you know, I got my certification, I got my degree, and I'm lost. I'm just feeling so alone and I don't know where to go. So I decided, I was like, well, let's put a mentorship together. I don't have the answer, but maybe collectively and with some mentors, we can figure it out. And actually, Women in Cybersecurity is the one paid resource that I recommend to all of them. I'm like, I don't have a deal with them. There's a lot of other stuff I can get through my relationship with Google or through my relationship with Microsoft, but that's one that I'm like, it will pay for itself. You're going to get the ISC squared certified cybersecurity voucher and training. There's these mentorships. There's just like so much. I just did the Target Chaos in the Casino hackathon. I've also done a Department of Defense hackathon, and realized I'm like, if you actually approach a hackathon with patience and dedication and just showing up and just doing it, you're a lot further along. Because when I did the Department of Defense, it's like 5,000 people signed up. I think 1,000 people probably didn't even, or more, didn't even bother to show up. And then those who did, I think 1,000 kind of dropped out in the first 2 hours. And that's what I brought. I was like, you know what? I'm going to bring my maturity, and I'm just going to sit here for 8 hours. I'm going to do my best over 8 hours. I can use ChatGPT and I'll see where it takes it. And I placed 201. And I kind of got stuck on one where it wouldn't accept the answer. And eventually they refreshed it and they said, we can take one of 2 answers, and that solved it. Probably spent about 3 hours on that one. If I didn't get stuck, I would have gone further. But I learned that I crushed open source intelligence and I crushed forensics. So that's a little bit of my story into cybersecurity. But I think by being the cybersecurity facilitator and mentor, it forces me to build relationships. It forces me to seek out resources and content, because I regularly send newsletters and opportunities to all of my mentees saying, hey, there's this, hey, there's this, hey, there's this, like, let's go, let's go, let's go. And the one opportunity, which may be a fit for you, just throw this out there, to you, as well as anybody who's listening who this is a fit for, we got invited to be NICE, which is part of NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. They have a Cybersecurity Career Ambassador. So I signed up for that because I love all these ambassador roles. And the community and network that's part of that is just super crazy powerful, because these are the people in government who are committed to cybersecurity careers, and that they be accessible and that they be easy, and that they, I mean, easy meaning not so frustrating that people just like burn out being like, this is too hard to even start. So they want to sort of encourage career development and just help people see themselves in cybersecurity careers and help to show them the path.
I think that that's really nice that you're in that community, and then right now that you're exposing people to that community as well once it comes back out for people, and encouraging not only myself but other people to apply for it. But I wanted to ask you a question. How do you manage it all, without getting, stressed or overwhelmed, being a part of these organizations or being part of groups, mentoring, just doing everything that you do. You're a powerhouse, Philippa, like really. and that's one thing that I'm trying to do right now is not overwhelm myself, but like seeing where the best fits are for me in reference to trainings that I take or groups that I'm in, or even like the mentorship that I said that I wanted to be a part of. Like, how do you do it all? How do you manage it?
I think there's a few ways. I think one of the things is I am always writing things down all the time, everywhere. So I handwrite things. I'm creating lists of in all sorts of places. I have my calendar. I think that's one thing. And then I also think it's about kind of knowing your plan. Like as I was telling you before, I'm like, I already have like at least 2 year plan of I'm still in school. I think this spring I was a little bit more confused because I didn't have the whole plan in front of me. And as it worked out, I had 2 units in my schedule I had to fill that were not available within my department. And it kind of got me looking in other departments in the university saying, how do I fill this 2 units? Because the financial consequence of dropping from full-time to part-time wasn't really sustainable. So I was like, okay. And so that actually forced me to look. And I found the 2 unit course in the law school as this, and they said, yes, we can offer you this one limited enrollment course. And so I said, perfect. And then once I was in this cybersecurity course, it's called Cybersecurity and Cybercrime, and just all the basics of the frameworks and case law and regulations and the different types of attacks, but everything from a kind of in the legal context. And I just fell in love with it. I was like, yes, I'm all in. Like I've had an interest in this, seeing that this would now buy me time to get those internships that I want to get. And these are, like I said, intelligence agency. You can't walk into the building without a security clearance type of internships. So that's where I was like, okay, I can see this. I applied for the full certificate. Once I got that, then it was like, I actually calmed down a lot because I was like, this makes so much sense because I can now like just be a student for the next 2 years, play with these ambassador roles that I have, be a content creator. And I would say one of the things is you always like want to look at your life in terms of like what brings you joy and brings your energy up and what kind of drains you. Because if you're in a lot of activities that bring your energy up, then it's easy. But if you're in a lot of activities that really drain you, then that's where it sort of, I think, starts to feel more frustrating. So I want to say being a student for me, it just brings me joy, and collaborating brings me joy. So I also have to like be brutally honest with myself on a given day, whereas like my graduate school studies are number one. Whatever I have to do for school, that comes first. and I have my list. I mean, I have other family responsibilities and side work, and I have other things that I do. So a lot of it's just a constant prioritization. And I think a lot of the commitments, like I do this podcast, I deliver an episode every Thursday. And I think just some of it, you just get into routines and you kind of know what's expected. So yeah, I'm very clear, like, what are my deadlines? What are my work process? What are my goals? What are my plans? Giving myself a broad run of time to do this, and yet working a little bit on everything every week, having every day. And again, knowing that, being collaborative with people brings me joy. Okay. And creating brings me joy. And so learning brings me joy. I will say that my quote for Valentine's Day of this last year was roses are red, violets are blue, unexpected curly bracket on line 32. Because I was so deep down in learning JavaScript. Like I ended up putting my podcast on replay because I had taken on this sort of 3D project that's really cool, but that's one I have to get across the finish line because it doesn't have a deadline. It's like a self-imposed deadline. I know they want it, but they're like, you do it on your time. So that's one thing I know that like as soon as I open it, I go down the rabbit hole. So I have to like manage the coding with the social, because I have to kind of figure out like, and I think that sometimes you have to just make peace with the fact that I won't respond to people as quickly as I want to respond to them, but they know I will respond. But instead of like a 24-hour turnaround, you might get a 5-day turnaround. So it's not being disrespectful. It's just trying to manage everything I've got going on. And that, and so I think now with the mentorship program I have, some of the mentees have stepped up to say, oh, how can we help you? How can we volunteer to help, make this better for all of us, and not sort of take stuff off, but help. Like there's projects that I can't do by myself that people have stepped up and said, oh, I can help with that.
Like I'll agree with everything you just said. Like I do enjoy learning and collaborating with people, networking, meeting people as well. Like right now I'm doing a Google certificate program through Google. And then I just got accepted into this, I just got a scholarship to learn Microsoft Azure. I didn't expect for them to message me back so fast saying that I got it, but yeah. So I'm managing. So I'm going to be doing both of those at the same time, and then I'm also going to be and then like I said, I was going to also apply for the mentorship program. So if I got into that, I told myself, okay, these are the 3 things that I can have in my bucket, and then I'm not going to over exceed that, right? Because I know myself and I don't want to overwhelm myself or just like doing, like I've been in a position where I was like, okay, I'm going to do all of these different things at once. And then I found that I was overwhelmed, or I found that I didn't have time to fully manage it. So that's why I was asking you, like, how do you find the time? But that makes sense to just, write everything down, or maybe organize it in a certain way, looking at the deadlines of things and just making sure that they're prioritized within the day, whether that's 30 minutes, an hour, however much time that you dedicate to it, then it'll get done. So I mean, I'm really excited to finish all of the things that I have on my list right now, and then adding new things as I go along, so that I can gain more knowledge, and then also have the opportunity, if it's presented to me, to be able to help somebody along the way that may be confused or may not know what direction that they could go, providing them, like you, with resources, or connecting them with organizations or people that they can talk to, so that they don't feel discouraged in this industry. So I'll definitely take that tip that you mentioned.
We as an industry, which is women in tech, and then we as an industry in cybersecurity, we need to see more women. We need to see more Black women in these roles, and in just owning this power. I mean, we just had an incident, and I don't know if you can comment much about it, but with the Palo Alto conference, they were having women standing around with like light shades on their head, and like men making these obnoxious misogynistic comments about, well, cybersecurity, like, yeah, the women are here to be models, but that's about all they can do. And I don't know the exact quote, but the idea, it was not kind. And he was like, oh, I don't even mean it like in a mean way. And there's been a lot of pushback on social media just saying, not okay, like really, really not okay. And that's why I feel it's so important for women to be seen. I feel it's so important for women to come together, for women to cheerlead each other, for us to do study jams together, for us to get these certificates and certifications and do the work and be recognized for doing the work, and start to evolve the culture.
Yeah, and I think the same thing as you. And I did see that what happened with the Palo Alto, and I looked at it and I was like, what was the purpose of this? It really didn't make any sense to me that they thought that would be something that would be okay, especially in such a large public event. Was it at DEF CON, right?
It was a conference. Yeah, I don't remember which conference. Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, and it like I didn't see the commentary that the person made in reference to like, oh, this is all women do, like, which was definitely super unacceptable. But I mean, that's the thing. Like, I don't want women to look at those things and then feel discouraged because somebody is putting out information. They're representing women in that such a light, because that's not who women are. That's not what women do. That's not what they bring to the table. They're not just some lamppost or light that just stands around and doesn't do anything. Women are very empowering. They're very encouraging. They're very smart, loyal, honest, fiery, you know what I'm saying? And I want everyone to feel like they can exhibit that and feel comfortable to exhibit that and not feel discouraged to bring who they really are to the table. You said something else and I'm trying to remember what it was. And to, just to not be afraid. Like when I was getting into this industry, like I think I mentioned this before, like I was afraid because I didn't know exactly where to go. And part of my story that I wanted to share with you earlier that I mentioned, I may share it later, was that, what encouraged me and then wanted me to have this unified front with, you know, with women and help women grow in this industry is that I got, you know, somebody, they leaned down, grabbed me and pulled me up. Like when I went to the WESIS conference, I met a woman there. I told her my story, and you know, and she went back, had the conversations with, you know, with her leadership, and that's ultimately how I was able to get my foot in the door with this, you know, in this industry, you know. So it was like without her, you know, I know she you know, if you talk to her now, she'll say, oh no, Cheton, you did it. And I'm like, I may have done it in the sense of presenting myself, but you helped me, you know, get here. And I'm deeply, deeply grateful for her because she doesn't know the trajectory, how much of the trajectory of my life that she changed. And I want people to, you know, and I want to be that for somebody else. I want to, you know, not make anybody feel less than or you know, because I think sometimes women also get a bad rep where they think that that we're not encouraging, you know, to each other, or that we're not there for each other, which is far from the truth, at least what I've seen, especially in WESIS. Like, it's one of the most encouraging organizations I've ever been a part of, to see so many women in one area at one time, lifting each other up, helping each other. It's very powerful and very, very, very like encouraging to see.
I wanted to ask about, like, you know, what inspired you to go back to school and get your BA? Because I think that's a big deal. And I think a lot of people who, you know, haven't had that experience might not know what to do or how to approach it.
Yeah, so I went online to get my bachelor's of science in cybersecurity technology. But so before I went back there, I used to go in person to a 2-year community college, College of DuPage. And I went there. I forgot how long I had taken off of school. I think I had been out of school for like 6 years. And I was like, I want to get my degree. I like to learn. I want to go to school. And at that time, I was going to school for like trying to be a counselor. I wanted to do some form of counseling. I don't think I really thought about like, okay, I'm older. You know, I'm older. So like I may feel a certain way because the people here that I'm or the people that are in my classes maybe a little younger than me. I just looked at it as I'm here for a purpose, and I'm here to educate myself so that I can have something to be proud of. And that's something that I would encourage anybody who is struggling to go back to school. Like, I don't think that they should think of it more so, because you can't think of how you're going to be perceived by other people, because what is it that you're trying to achieve, right? So the goal is to continue to look at what are you trying to achieve? And if you look at it that way, then it doesn't, you know, it shouldn't matter. I know that's easier said than done, but I mean, but there's also nothing wrong with, you know, meeting people that are younger than you, because they may bring a different perspective that you may not have thought of. And that was my experience when you know, when I was in the community college after not being in school for about 5 or 6 years. But, you know, being online, I felt like had its other challenges, because you're not there with an actual professor where you can ask questions, you can talk to your classmates, and you could, you know, do study groups and things of that nature. It's easier when you're in person, but online it could, that gap, there is a big gap in that. But I mean, I would still say that if anybody is looking to go back to school, to just do it, you know, to not think about it as much, to just, you know, figure out what it is you want to do. Or if you haven't figured out what you want to do, just maybe get some type of perspective into what it is, where it is you want to go. And then just go to that school, or look up schools, research them, talk to a counselor, talk to an academic advisor who can provide more context, so then they could say, hey, if this is what you're interested in, this is what you have to do. And then once you get that idea of what you have to do, then, you know, you could go online. You can go online, look at the course curriculum, and see how it pans out for you. Look at when the classes start. You know what I mean? See see the timelines to see, you know, what would be best for you. But I definitely, you know, anybody, like I said, who's feeling discouraged about going back to school after not being there for a long time, it's nothing but fear. And one thing that I say in my mind about the word fear is false evidence appearing real. I learned that, not that, you know, like a couple of years back, and that I try to repeat that in my mind when I feel like I'm afraid to do something. But that's what I would say to them. Just know that it's false evidence appearing real, but it's not real. Creating it.
I know that one, and I like that one a lot. I do think that that's a good one. The other thing I think I've also realized is this was just a pandemic thing for me. I took on so much trauma during the pandemic that I had never experienced trauma at that level in my life. And when I went through this trauma, I suddenly like had more empathy for it. I never understood what that meant. And I realized like what a huge need I had for psychological safety. And and it triggered some health issues, and it triggered just all sorts of things where I found myself getting very, very small. Whereas before, and even I think I've come out of it now, like I am big and I have a lot of joy, but I had lost all of that. And I was just in absolute like complex PTSD is the only way I could describe it. And I think that it gave me this empathy for people who have had what I call learning trauma. And when I first started learning my GIS studies, I cried and cried learning the software. It is so challenging. And because you don't really have the hallway, like you said, in-person school, you can kind of ask someone in the hall, like, hey, how did you do this? Or what do I do? So I had to learn that there were a few people I'd made friends with that I could, because they did have us all come in person for a week-long event, that like a kickoff, which was really great because then we got to sort of bond. And I had a few people, one in particular that I could text and say, hey, like I'm stuck. And there were times I had to just call the professor. But what I also realized about myself is I have no educational trauma. So when I cry, I don't make it about me. I don't make it about I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I'll never learn this. I make it about like, I'm stuck right now. Like I need help. Who can I call for help? Where can I get my lifeline? And I realize I think what happens with people who've had that educational trauma is if it gets triggered, then it becomes I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough. And I feel educational trauma is coming from schools being underfunded, really bad teachers, missing steps along the way that then forever confused you. And then you start making it about you. And it was never about you.
Yeah. I mean, no, I think I would agree with you where it's I'm trying to process what you said, honestly.
I guess what I'm saying is there's some people that are like, for example, math afraid. They had a really bad math teacher in second grade and it all fell apart for them after that. They just couldn't get it together. And then suddenly every time the word math comes up, they just panic. They like go into a full-on panic attack. And they don't understand, like, this was never you. The educational system sort of failed you somewhere along the way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I would agree with you there. And I just think that, like, even when you're faced with those types of things, because I've went through things like that before too, where it deterred me on wanting to, like, I had a situation back in when I went to college when I was like 18. I had a teacher who she just, for lack of a better term, I don't know if she didn't like me or if how she exhibited herself was not the best way that an educator should have. And for a long time, it deterred me away from the actual that, I guess, like that academic study, because it was in Black American Studies. And the way that she treated me when I was in her class, it just completely deterred me away from, like, it kind of made me, which I didn't even realize until recently, that she kind of made me not want to learn more about it, because I was very deep into that subject. And that was the whole reason why I took the class. And then after that, I was just like, I don't really I don't really want to do this anymore. However, I did but I did, you know, as time progressed, as years went on, I did make it a point to still educate myself about that particular, like can't like academic study with the Black American studies, whether that was a documentary or whether that was reading something or learning more about a civil rights advocate or activist, sorry. That made me but I did realize that did discourage me to some point. And even what you were saying before, like I just went through something recent where it kind of it was a bit traumatic, and it made me feel very small. But I'm also getting out of it, right? Like I'm still getting out of it now because it was like very recent. And that's why I'm like challenging myself to do more things because that did put me in a not a very good place. But like I keep telling myself, you know, every day, Cheton, good job, you did this, you did that, you did this. Like be proud of yourself, you know.
Absolutely. And that's why I mentioned this sort of idea. Like we do take on these traumas in life, and I think it's important to acknowledge them and then find ways to get ourselves to heal from them. Sometimes healing is time. I think healing is also just a lot of putting ourselves in safe spaces, putting ourselves with people who love on us and help us, you know, maintain what I call sort of psychological safety. And then, you know, finding our way, you know, to financial safety and emotional safety and physical safety and cyber safety, like all the things that make us feel. And that's actually, I think, you know, one of the reasons I'm also probably interested in human security and interested in cybersecurity is I think actually coming out of this experience, my sense of defense is like, now I can make defense fun, not just defense like, oh my gosh, I'm being crushed. But this sense of, you know, yes, I've come out sort of the other side of something that was not fun, but, you know, how can I protect other people, and how do I know I can protect myself going forward? And that is something that, you know, just triggered this concept of like, oh, you know, I think there is this, no, I know that there is this educational trauma that if people can heal from that, then learning gets to be fun. Not learning has to be traumatic.
Oh, and, 100%.
And that's where I was going with that, was I think that because sometimes like when we learn tech, we will cry. But if you make those tears about, you know, you trigger the old child self that's like, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I can't do this, you quit. Whereas if you trigger, I'm really overwhelmed in this moment, I don't like this kind of sucks, but who can I call for help to figure this out? Then you just move forward.
Yeah. Or taking a moment, like when you're in the moment of like, I'm overwhelmed, I don't know what to do. You could even take a moment to just, you know, decompress, whether that's doing a deep breathing exercise, whether that's doing a meditation, and you know, bring yourself back down with a clearer mind and be like, okay, what is the problem that I'm looking to solve? You know, and then go from there as far as solving the problem, opposed to allowing that one particular moment to consume you, you know, or imposter syndrome to consume you, or those negative thoughts to consume you. I think that, you know, that's the best way for anyone to overcome, you know, academic trauma or just trauma in general. You know, yes, it takes time, like you said, with healing. It's not just going to be instantaneous, but you could definitely make the decision to be like, okay, I want this to change, and I'm going to make active steps each and every day to make sure that this change is implemented into my life. And then you start to see that it changes the trajectory of your life. It changes how you feel. It changes your thought processes too. And then you begin to heal. And that's the best part of it.
Yep. And I'm actually reminded of a book that when I was like really deep into like the mire of this, like just not in a good place. One of the books that I had read was by a woman named Carolyn Myss, MYSS. And she does this like the chakras and the body. And she, like, there's an audiobook that I was listening to, and it talks about the the different chakras and sort of like where it holds energy and something. I don't know, like one of them she was talking about, and I just like was bawling. Like I was like, oh my God, I had no idea. Like that was just like such a trigger. And but it was also a huge release. Like again, sometimes like healing is a process, but sometimes you have to kind of look for the healing. I know another book that I haven't read yet, but I kind of want to, but I see a lot of quotes around the internet from it, is The Body Keeps Score. And just how, you know, these things happen to us and then our body is like, yeah, I remember. So, you know, to unravel those things. But yeah, healing is a process. But also, I think the more healed we are, it actually makes school more fun. It makes learning more fun. Because I think that the earlier you get into something, like if I open an assignment early and I leave myself plenty of time to explore and plenty of time to make mistakes and plenty of time to like step away, say, I need a break, I'll come back to this later, versus like avoid, like try to do it at the last minute and then just collapse in on yourself because it's not possible to get it done in that time. So I think that's another like thing, is just getting into things early to give yourself this, all the space that you're going to need, and to give yourself like the time you need. And I think that's like one of the things for me is like, I'm so excited that I've got 2 more years of just being a student, because I was like, I need all of it, because I want, by the end of it, like I will be proficient in cloud, I will be proficient in AI/ML, I will be proficient in geospatial and my mapping, spatial data science, and in cybersecurity, and like figuring out how all those kind of things come together. And also really want to like take my content, my podcasting and my video and community building to the next level. So I got all sorts of stuff that just brings me joy. And then I'm sort of giving myself time and space to like let it unfold. And then I get to meet cool people like you, and see how we to collaborate. And I love your voice. Like I said, you are really, I thank you for your time today. Like amazing. You said later you'd tell us a story. So we're going to kind of be wrapping up in the next sort of a little bit here. So you want to like lean in and give us even more of your story? Would love to hear it.
It was just, it was like the story that I was telling you earlier, just really about how I stepped into the industry. And I just really want to emphasize, like, I don't, don't be afraid to make those connections. Don't be afraid to go out and, go to a conference or to connect with people, even if you don't know them very well, like me and you, Philippa, like we connected and here we are doing the podcast. But yeah, it was just me not being afraid to, like, I applied for the WISA scholarship. Like the first year that I went, I applied for it and I got it. And then I went there and I met some amazing people the first year. And then the second year I met some really nice, some really good people. The woman that I told you about earlier, I met her at the airport. Though I didn't meet her at the conference, I met her at the airport and we connected because I had on my Women in Cybersecurity shirt. And that's how, and we ended up being on the same plane back home, and that's where, like, if you believe in coincidences, I don't think anything is a coincidence. I think everything is in divine timing. And also it's in the timing of your life and what's meant for you. And that moment was meant for me, right? I mean, I was meant to meet her. I was meant to connect with her. I was meant for her to, talk about, what I aspire to do, my attributes and my strengths, to be able to bring that back to her, her boss at the time, which is now my boss now. And, and now I'm in this industry, and I incur, and I had difficulties along the way where I didn't, understand certain things, and I'm still a work in progress, and I'm, still learning, because I don't think that in this industry, it's so broad that you're not going to know everything. So, I also encourage women that are stepping into this, don't be discouraged by that, because you'll keep learning as you go, and tech changes all the time. So you're never going to know everything, so that's what I have to keep telling myself as I continue on my journey. But that was really my journey. And when I have the opportunity, I, I'll tell people about, like you, Philippa, I'll tell people about conferences. I'll tell people about, certain trainings that they could take for free, or trainings that'll benefit them. Or if I even just have to be an encouraging voice, to lift somebody up, that's what I'm going to do as well. But, everything that I've mentioned here is really my story of how I got here, how I broke into this industry, and how I'm continuing to persevere through it, even during the challenging times.